European Union is at a decisive point now in our history. Thank you very much. President Tajani, Vice Presidents, President Juncker, Commissioner Hogan, distinguished leaders of the political groups, members of the European Parliament, dear friends. I want to say that it is a really great privilege to be the first speaker in your series of debates with heads of government on the future of the European Union. Mr. President, I believe that the European Union is at a decisive point now in our history. Despite all of the upheavals in recent years, the rise of populism and Euroscepticism, nationalism, anti-democratic forces, we meet today in solidarity and with a renewed sense of purpose. The European ideal has always been inspired by a spirit of optimism and a belief in a better future. And while that ideal has been tested, it hasn't been broken. And based on the achievements of the past, we have a renewed appetite to face the challenges of the future. Back in 1947, representatives from 16 countries met in Paris to discuss how, in the words of Jean Monnet, they could resist economic decline and preserve political freedom. En 1947, des représentants de 16 pays sont réunis à Paris pour discuter la manière dont, selon les termes de Jean Monnet, ils pourraient résister au déclin économique et préserver la liberté politique. L'Irlande était l'un de ces 16 pays. La sagesse de la prédiction de Monnet, selon laquelle il n'y a pas à devenir pour les peuples d'Europe autre dans l'Union, c'est vite fait jour. Dès le début, les petits pays ont contribué de manière non négligeable au développement de l'Europe. Et dans les années 50, Joseph Beck, luxembourgeois et grand architecte d'intégration, a joué un rôle capital dans la création de la communauté européenne du charbon et de l'acier et dans la tenue de la conférence de Messine en Sicile. Interrogé sur la présence des politiciens européens réunis en Sicile en 1955, un haut dirigeant politique britannique rétorqua que ces derniers avaient pris part aux fouilles archéologiques, des fouilles qui ont servi de base au traité de Rome. Wir sehen die starke europäische Wertvorstellung in Europa der Persönlichkeiten wie Konrad Adenauer und Hans-Dietrich Genscher, deren Vision für Versöhnung und Integration in ganz Europa so wichtig war. Wir sehen sie in Arbeit Helmut Kohls und seinen Glauben, die Bedürfnisse und Gleichberechtigung kleiner Nationen zu beachten. Und wir sehen sie in der Vision Jacques Delors und seinem Glauben an einen tieferen Sinn Europas, ein Seele für Europa, ohne den das ganze Projekt scheitern würde. Seine Arbeit der Schaffung einer gemeinsamen Währung, den Euro, ist ein bedeutsames Erbe. Seine Aufgabe an uns, einen größeren Sinn auszutreiben, ist noch bedeutsamer. Mr. President, dear friends, the promise of a better future has motivated people to work for the European ideal since the very beginning. And speaking in this chamber today, I'm reminded of one of the greatest figures in Irish politics, and indeed one of the greatest figures in politics from Northern Ireland, John Hume, whose birthday it is tomorrow, and who served as a member of this great Parliament for 25 years. John Hume spoke many times about the symbolism of the bridge not too far from here, connecting Strasbourg to Kehl, just across the border in Germany. He spoke how easy and ordinary it was to walk across that bridge, and given Europe's dark history, how remarkable and profound that ordinariness was. In the European Union, John Hume saw a model and a vision for how a lasting peace, however improbable, could be fostered and built. And he saw how that model of people working together with a shared purpose and endeavour spilling their sweat instead of their blood, as he put it, could provide an inspiration for my own country. Today, there is a peace bridge crossing the River Foyle, bringing together the divided communities in John's native city of Derry in Northern Ireland, a bridge that the European Union helped to build. Dear friends, it's hard to imagine the Good Friday Agreement being made without our shared membership of the European Union and its single market. And in Ireland, we are now having to contemplate our future without that foundation which underpinned it and made it possible. That's why the government which I lead has been so determined to protect the Good Friday Agreement in all its parts and all that flows from it. And it's why we've insisted that there cannot be a return to a hard border on our island, no new barriers to the movement of people or to trade. And it's why we're so deeply grateful for the remarkable solidarity and support from other member states. It is everything we hoped for and proof positive of why small countries benefit so much from membership of this union. And so the Irish people are profoundly grateful for the unswerving support of this Parliament. And in particular, I want to thank your President, Antonio Tajani, your Brexit coordinator, Guy Verhofstadt, the leader of the EPP group, Manfred Weber, and all of the other political groups that have been so supportive. The solidarity of the Parliament has been matched by the Commission and the Council. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to President Juncker, to the lead Commission negotiator, Michel Barnier, and also to Council President Donald Tusk. The European Union has consistently recognised the unique position of Northern Ireland and the unique situation in which it finds itself given the decision of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, a decision which, of course, we respect. Notwithstanding that, the majority of people in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. The majority of the representatives elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly want to remain in the customs union and the single market. And it's likely that the majority of people living in Northern Ireland will remain European citizens after Brexit because of their unique status under the Good Friday Agreement, which allows them to be British citizens, Irish citizens, or both. The breakthrough achieved before Christmas means that the United Kingdom has guaranteed that whatever the future relationship with the European Union is, a hard border on the island will be avoided, and the common travel area and all the associated rights that flow from it will be maintained. As the negotiations move forward into phase 2, we'll continue to rely on your support and solidarity as we work to ensure that what has been promised in theory is delivered in practice, and there can be no backsliding on this. So it's important that these commitments are fully reflected in the legal text of the withdrawal agreement and firmly embedded in the UK's future relationship with the European Union, whatever shape that ultimately takes place. And for my part, I hope that the new relationship that exists between the United Kingdom and the European Union is as close and as deep as is possible, but consistent with the need of the Union to protect our internal market and customs union. Mr. President, I was born European and am part of a new generation of political leaders who were born after our countries joined the European Union or its predecessors. We treasure what has been achieved and share the vision of the founders for further integration and cooperation. While I've always lived with the benefits of European membership, I've never taken them for granted. I very much value what was hard won by past generations and what they sacrificed for us. That vision delivered peace in Europe and opened the door to peace and prosperity in my own country. These values of solidarity, partnership, cooperation, which are central to the European project, have brought Ireland from the position of being one of the least developed member states when we joined the Union to one of the most prosperous today. And for us, Europe enabled our transformation from being a country on the periphery to an island at the centre of the world, at the heart of this common European home which we helped to build. The promise of Europe unlocked the potential of Ireland, and it allowed us to take our place among the nations of the world. So, along with other member states who've benefited so much from the European Union, I believe we have a particular responsibility now to lead on the future of Europe debate. We have much to offer and also much to give, and I firmly believe it is our responsibility and relish the opportunity. So I think we should approach, all of us, the debate on the future of Europe with a positive attitude, talking about what we want to achieve for our citizens rather than what we want to block or resist. Many of the policy challenges we face are increasingly global, and they cannot be met by nation states acting alone. Issues such as uncontrolled mass migration, climate change, cybersecurity, international trade, the regulation of medicines and major corporations, many of whom are now bigger than states, cannot be solved by 28 countries coming up with 28 different solutions. In unity, there is security. In cooperation, there is strength. As we say in the Irish language, Níneart gur le céile, there's no strength without being together. So we should, I believe, welcome those who aspire to and who are ready to take on the responsibilities and obligations of membership. The prospect of membership of the European Union can be a powerful motivator for those who seek to build peace and freedom and prosperity and democracy in the Western Balkans. And these countries, I believe, should be given a pathway to membership. Mr. President, I believe that in the Europe of the future, all European countries and all member states will be small states, even though perhaps they don't realise it yet. And you only need to look at the list of the top 60 cities in the world in terms of population. Only one of the top 60 is in the European Union, and it's currently getting ready to leave. And in terms of population now, there is only one country in Europe that's in the top 20 in the world, and its population is falling. So in a global context, we are very much now a union of small countries. And I know the population doesn't equate to economic power or military strength, but there can be no doubt that these are also shifting east and south globally. So I think we need to stick together if we're to protect what we have and continue to export our values and worldview. A Europe worth building is a Europe worth defending. And with the launch of PESCO in December, which Ireland was pleased to join, we are coming together to answer new threats in an inclusive way. The threats we face in the 21st century include cyber terrorism, international terrorism, uncontrolled mass migration, natural disasters, drug and human trafficking. And we want to be involved in European actions against all of these. We definitely can't do it on our own. My country also has a very proud history of military neutrality, participating in UN peacekeeping operations and EU common security and defence policy operations, and we are not members of NATO. So we will participate in PESCO in a way that is consistent with those traditions, as other countries will too. President, I believe the Europe of the future must do four things. First of all, we should continue to do what we currently do well. Secondly, we should focus on the big new challenges facing Europe and its citizens. Third, where appropriate, we should devolve some powers back to member states, municipalities and regions. And fourthly, we should engage more with citizens in direct democracy. Ireland, as you know, has moved from being a net beneficiary of the EU budget to one that is now a net contributor. Nonetheless, we're open to contributing more, but only if it's spent on things that contribute to the advancement of the European deal and the European project. For example, structural funds for Central and Eastern Europe to enable them to unlock their economic potential as we did. The European Union should also continue to fund well programmes and policies that work and have stood the test of time, such as the Common Agricultural Policy, and providing funding for research, innovation, Erasmus, Interreg, and the European Investment Bank, among others. Budgets for these, in my view, should be protected. Europe can do new things, and Europe should do new things. But new programmes require new money. Ireland is a founder member of the Euro and a founder member of the single market. and we were among the first to open our labour market to Europeans from Central and Eastern Europe. We now want to see the completion of the single market and the digital single market, and above all, a single market that serves the interests of all our citizens and not just corporations. So I want to commend this Parliament on the work it has done to make the lives of Europeans better by removing roaming charges on mobile phones within the European Union. That helps bring people together. Your recent action on credit card charges. And likewise, I commend the way you've championed air passenger rights and your plans for Interrail. Now is the time to fulfil the promise of the single market in other areas. For example, take financial services, insurance, mortgages, loans, so that people can get cheaper loans from European lenders and insurers if needs be. And I'd ask the Parliament to work on this in the period ahead, and I think it's something that would very much be welcomed by our citizens. I also believe we should work much more closely on the cost of medicines, and new innovative medicines in particular. This could save billions for taxpayers, freeing up funding to ensure that modern medicines are available to patients at the same time in every country, and countries are not played off against each other. So let's pool the buying power of 450 million people to do so. I also believe in more free trade agreements with third countries and in completing monetary union. And I believe in a banking union to protect citizens' savings on a pan-European basis and reduce exposure to individual member states. And I also think that a capital markets union would provide the building blocks for an integrated capital market across Europe. In terms of improving democracy within the EU, I support a Europe-wide list for the European Parliament. I'd like to get people in cafes in Naples and restaurants in Galway talking about the same election choices. Perhaps that's an ambitious idea, but I think it's one we should strive for. And I believe we should also make permanent the Spitzenkandidat system and democratise the choosing of candidates for other leading positions within the EU. And let's establish as well a common asylum policy and system to replace the current system, which we all know is not working. Too few countries have shouldered the responsibility of providing refugees with a fresh start in Europe. We can all do more, and we must. And let's put fire back into the engine of our social Europe by following through on the proclamation that we issued in Gothenburg last year on jobs, employment rights, and pensions, among other things. Whatever our future holds, Europe needs to be competitive economically. And one of the ways to ensure this is by allowing competition among member states. And I think this is particularly important for peripheral and less developed countries whose domestic markets are small and need inward investment. My strong view is that national taxes that fund national budgets should be determined by national parliaments and governments. But equally strong is my view that corporations should pay their fair share of tax, and we cannot tolerate a situation where large companies avoid paying any taxes anywhere. And that's true for American tech companies, as it is true for European car manufacturers and international aerospace and defence companies. Ireland has already taken steps to close loopholes in our tax laws, and we'll do more in the years ahead. But we strongly believe this should be done on an international basis through the OECD, as Europe should not give advantages to our competitors on other continents by acting unilaterally. Mr. President, as a community, we must also look outwards, offering leadership and partnership, especially when it comes to Africa, a continent which is only 8 kilometres from Europe. And I believe that Europe must show much greater leadership on Africa, and I support the idea of an EU Marshall Plan for that continent. We've already witnessed the terrible impact that chaos in Syria and Lebanon has had on people in those countries and its impact on Europe. Libya and Syria are small countries, Imagine what would happen if similar events were to unfold in massive countries with massive populations like Egypt or Nigeria. The consequences are too awful to contemplate for us and for them. By contrast, we can look east to Asia and the successful development of those countries in East Asia who have transformed themselves from countries to which we gave aid to countries with which we now trade. So in the 21st century, Africa must succeed. It's in our interest and it's in theirs. So let's make it part of our mission as Europeans. I also strongly support the subsidiarity and proportionality task force. It's interesting to me and for many of us who travel the world that on many matters and many issues, US states and Canadian provinces and even counties and municipalities have greater autonomy and greater variation among themselves than EU member states currently have. So do we have the balance right? Not always. And does everything have to be harmonised and standardised? I don't think so. So, Mr. President, in making decisions, I think it's vital that our citizens are engaged. In Ireland, we've launched a national debate, a citizens' dialogue on Europe, and our starting point is to focus on the hopes and dreams of our citizens. Led by our Minister for Europe, we're undertaking a series of regional meetings and other initiatives across the country between now and Europe Day on the 9th of May. And I strongly encourage other countries to do the same. President, it's been an honour, a great honour, to be the first European head of state or government to speak to the European Parliament on this hugely important topic of the future of Europe. All of you, across all political groupings, have enormous political experience, insight and knowledge. There is a mass of wisdom in this chamber, and also imagination. And I believe it's the perfect place to debate our future as we move forward and to ensure that into the future that parliaments and governments are more connected to each other. I know that under the guidance of President Tajani, you've already started to discuss the issues in a thoughtful and productive manner. And even before the Commission's white paper, you adopted 3 resolutions on our future. I hope that this first debate in this series and the others to follow will be lively and spontaneous, and I look forward to engaging with you during the course of this session. The European Union has always offered the promise of a better future. It is a future that will not be handed to us. We must work to create it. We can achieve a more perfect union, and we can speak to Europe's soul. Our values like peace, friendship, freedom, justice, opportunity and cooperation are the values we're committed to in advancing in Ireland, on the island of Ireland, within our European family, and in our relations in the wider world. Europe has been a great success, and we owe its achievements, peace, individual rights, equality before the law, prosperity, to that political creativity and the friendship that we've built together. I believe that Europe is the outcome of one of the greatest acts of political creativity in human history, and that same creativity and vision of the founders should drive our work today. The European ideal took flight in the second part of the 20th century, when people imagined a world joined by mutual interest, trust and affection, replacing one that was torn apart by jealousy, fear and animosity. Building on the great successes and achievements of the past, I believe that with our imagination, with creativity, with courage, we can provide a soul and a heart for Europe, creating opportunities for all of our citizens, and we can ensure that the European ideal that took flight in the last century will soar in the 21st. Mr. President, I want to conclude with a few words in the first official language of my country. Credum gurvi an spirid yerfach, agus crediv adauchi, níos far bakush le hinspirid an ideal orpig igoni. Murach in Europe, near churu, ardir, san oiriv a mask náisiún na crinne. Tom and buich, the vals dot orpig, agus new partiach, agus an ara, a hug she doing, the ling co to Brexit. Devnian sin an fá, a ayan chorha bioga torva, as an malrit den ei. Inish ta an deshagoing, Europe na tauchi a haulu. Agus bawahlam lanúnta raig leis, an dul chun cínatá á dhéanamh againn, agus stiúrú na dúthláin móra nua atá I gceist. Bawahlam go mbeidh páirt níos gníomhaí ag Saránní in éon leathas díreach, agus tásúlagam go léireoin an Europe níos mó tróir faoi cuasaí na Africa. Takeíam leis an smaoinemh maidir le Marshall Plan don Afric. Agus widne ag cur le rathúlacht na léitheanta atá thart. Credum le saolaíocht agus le misneach go mbeidh den ann anam agus crí a chur ar fáil don Europe. Agus deisina a chruthú dar Saránnig go léir. Gur míam agad. Thank you very much.